Kit Edit Part 2. So we've assumed that you looked at the first video and seen the basic things that we do on a pad. Set the channel, set the note numbers that we want in slots from 1 to 32, set a minimum velocity, a maximum velocity, a gate time for that sound, and determine whether it's a roll mode or velocity gate or off, and whether the sounds, the slots, are playing in an alternate pattern or in a simultaneous pattern or layered pattern, etc. Now we get into some fancier stuff, and one of them is called pad control. And again, normally it's off. But now we have these features. They're called note shift, velocity shift, control paths, and slot shift. So, what note shift does, it plays a game of when you assign a note number. Let's say you assign note number 1, and let's say we assign it to a note number of, let's say we assign it to a note number of 1. So that means every time I play that pad, it's always going to play a note of 1. But if I go to this note shift mode and I set it to 127, now that means that as I get louder, from soft to loud, it shifts that note from 1 to 127. So in this case, the 127 values go from soft to loud. As it gets louder, it's changing the note number as well. And you can make it anything in between. So if you just wanted to dance between a couple of notes, let's say that you had your normal note shift at 60. So you set this up for 60, and you just want to have a couple of notes change as you get louder. And if I set this value to 64, now it will play between 60 and 64 on how hard you hit. So that's note shift. So after note shift, we have another pad control called velocity shift. And velocity shift is an interesting thing in that what it does is, besides playing the note number that's on slot 1, it also sends out a controller number. And the controller number is here. It's set from, it could be any controller from 1 to 127. And what is a controller number? A controller number is a value that's assigned to a synthesizer, and that controller does a certain function. For example, on a lot of synthesizers, like Roll in particular, if you use controller number 16, as you play from soft to loud, it changes the positional sensing of the sound. So if you assign, let's say, note number 38 on slot number 1, which is the snare drum sound, and you also turn on the velocity shift, as you play from soft to loud, the sound will change because the controller number is being sent to the module, and the controller number 16 is sending out values from 1 to 127, and that changes the timbre of that sound. But on the Diti, you can also control the minimum and maximum effect of that controller, which means that if you only wanted a little bit of change, and you decided that you only wanted just as you got louder, it would start sending out a controller of 0, and as you got louder, it would go up to 21 and then stop. So you can control just how much of the controller data you want sent to the module. In the same way, you can set it up really high and then set this up to 127. So you can have, again, you can control how much of a range that you want exactly for the controller number that's being sent. And this is velocity shift. Another control number is control paths. And control paths is really interesting because what it does is this. The control path is, let's say, is assigned to number 16. 16 is the controller number. So again, let's say that we want to control panning, or we want to control volume. So let's say 10 is going to be set for your panning to go back and forth. So every time you play, it's going to now it's going to send values of controller 10 from 0 to 127. But it's determined by how many steps that you want. So if I set up 4 steps, that means it's going to break up between 0 and 127. It's going to cut that into 4 different values. 32, 60, 0, 32, 64, 96, like that. And then each time you play it, it goes from 0 to 127 in those 4 steps. So you can now control your panning, your volume. You can look up and see what sends out, what controller numbers of what they are. 1 is normally modulation, and you have 7 volume, and 10 is panning. It could be the other way around, but that's the idea. 16 is usually for positional sensing. So you have the minimum, the maximum effect, and how many steps. This is a real powerful feature in making things come alive. Now, slot shift is yet another control path, and what that does is simply jumps from slot 1 to slot whatever you have up until you get off, depending on how hard you hit. So we have in the instrument, for example, layer modes that allow you to go from 1 to 4. But let's say that you wanted to have a lot more than just 4 notes in your velocity shifting. By turning on slot shift, you're able to keep on playing as many notes as we have slots, which are 32, and it'll keep on playing until it sees an off. So if you assign a value to off, then that's going to be the last time it will only do velocity slot shifts up until it sees the off. So in this case, it'll send out 6 different slots, 6 different note numbers, or control functions actually, until it sees the off. So that's another really powerful feature that's built into the control paths. Another very important feature is called linking. And that means that you can link any pad to any pad. You can link 1A to 3B. But what makes it also cool is that you can also assign what percentage do you want the linking to be. So if you, for example, had a little bongo pattern going on another pad, you can have that pad just be very quiet relative to your playing velocity, or you can go above 100% and make it up to twice as loud as the velocity that you're playing. So that's pad linking. Really cool. There's another kind of linking inside the instrument that's actually linked inside of the slots. But this is more global to that input, that every time you strike on pad 1A, it's going to be sending out on 3B. We'll talk about those functions in the note slots later.